Cursed mode is finally out in Black Ops 7 Zombies, and it quite honestly saved zombies for me. Cursed mode is a brand new mode to Black Ops 7 that makes the game a bit more challenging and changes a few of the mechanics to make it feel closer to classic zombies. It's not exactly a classic mode one-to-one, but it does have some elements that push it further in that direction. And I'm being very serious when I say that it saved zombies for me. If you've been watching my channel for a while, you know that I really haven't been enjoying modern mechanics in zombies for quite a while now. I've definitely been enjoying some of the maps and games. I did like Black Ops 6 quite a bit in a lot of places. I played the maps and they were fun. I enjoyed each and every one of them at launch, but all of them fell off so fast for me. Within like a week or two after they released, I didn't care to go back to play them ever again. And I knew why I was feeling that way. It was because of the modern mechanics and systems. A lot of those systems just don't work for me. I don't think the gameplay flow of modern zombies is that fun. It doesn't give me the same satisfaction that classic zombies did for the most part. And this is not to say that Cursed mode literally fixes every problem I had with modern zombies, because it's obviously not the case, but it does fix some of my biggest issues with modern zombies. So in this video, I'm going to give you my first impressions of this mode. I have played over 10 hours of it at this point. I'm going to go through my positives and my negatives and talk about the future of where this mode can go and what it could mean for the future of the franchise even. First things first, it's important to keep in mind that we actually haven't found many of the relics yet, which of course the relics are one of the main aspects of this mode, where you'll be able to find these artifacts that will give you extra challenges in the mode that you can use. We do know what the relics are going to be, at least the ones that they're going to be giving us at launch, because they have been leaked, but in terms of what we've found as a community, we haven't found very many of them, and personally, I haven't used a single one of them yet, but I can still give you my first impressions of the mode itself, how it plays by default when you don't have any of the relics on. Starting off with the positives, obviously the two biggest and the best changes with this mode by default is the classic point system and the fact that there's no loadouts. You have to spawn in with the starting pistol, and you even can't spawn in with tacticals. You just get grenades, just like you do in classic zombies, which is really cool. When it comes to the pistol, you start with the Jaeger 45 pistol with 0 attachments. You don't even get your zombie build version of the pistol. It's quite literally a pistol with nothing on it. With the classic point system, it's very similar to pretty much all of the classic systems before Black Ops 4, and the way it works is that you get 10 points per bullet that hits a zombie, and then depending on where the bullet that lands the finishing blow on the zombie hits, you will get a certain amount of points based on that. So if it's in the body, it's like 60 points, if it's in the head, it's 100 points, and a melee kill will give you 130 points. And I wanted to talk about the classic point system and the fact that there's no loadouts in the same segment of the video, because a lot of the positive effects that these systems have are kind of similar to each other. They kind of play off one another. Firstly, and most importantly, the early rounds are so much more engaging. One of my biggest issues with modern zombies has been the early rounds. They're just so boring. You just shoot zombies in the head and that's about it. There's really nothing else to it. You just go through the motions, you have your loadout gun, you use your loadout gun to shoot the zombies in the head, you go through the rounds as fast as you can, and you just get through the map just like you normally would. And there's really not much engagement there with the zombies themselves. But with the classic point system, it's in your best interest to actually take your time with each individual zombie and make sure you're trying to get as many points out of them as possible. Of course, you don't have to do this. You will be just fine if you don't do this, but you definitely should. And you should be cognizant about where you're shooting the zombies, what guns you're using. And in some cases, it might not be smart to try to point max out of them. You might want to try to just kill them as quick as possible, especially if you're cornered. But if you're not cornered, then it might be in your best interest to shoot them a few times in the leg and then melee them to get as many points as humanly possible. And of course, this also increases weapon variety because you have different reasons for using different weapons. Some guns are just better at getting points than others, so you might actually choose to get that weak SMG off the wall, or that weak machine pistol that normally you don't really care to use, but you're going to use it anyways because it gets you a lot of points. And this works really well with not having loadouts, because in those early rounds, you are actually utilizing wall buys and the mystery box quite a lot. In every game I've played of Cursed mode so far on Ashes of the Damned, I have been consistently buying wall buys and hitting the mystery box, and it feels so good to finally do so. It's to the point where I'm actually really learning where the wall buy locations are on the map, which is something that classic zombies did very well. There was always so much personality behind where the wall buys are on the map. But I swear, in Modern Zombies, I don't know like any wall buy locations almost at all, because I just don't get wall buys in the majority of the modern games. But now I actually am doing it, and it's really fun to utilize them, especially because now you can get ammo again from wall buys just like you could in the classic games. And hitting the mystery box adds a whole nother layer of RNG to the game. You don't know what gun you're going to be running every single time you load in, and it's kind of exciting that way. You might hit the mystery box and you might end up getting a really high rarity SMG or really high rarity assault rifle or LMG, and you might think to yourself, you know what, I'm going to take that and use it the rest of this game, and it wasn't something you originally planned on using, and the game itself is pushing you in that direction. You don't have to force yourself to start with a pistol to try to get that feeling. It's just automatically there, and you have the classic point system on top of it, which makes it feel so much better, because if you do get that weak green rarity SMG, you can still use it and get a lot of points out of it because you can just spray and pray into the hordes, which was always one of the best parts of classic zombies. It's one of the most euphoric feelings to just see those points just racking up in the bottom left-hand side of the screen, and I'm so glad they gave us the classic score feed in this game as well, so you can actually see it the way it was in the classic games. We haven't had this since Black Ops 4, but even that game wasn't the actual classic point system. We just had the classic score feed in that game, but the actual classic point system hasn't been since COD World War II, and if you're just counting Treyarch games, it's been since Black Ops 3, so it's insane that it's been that long since we've had this classic system with the classic score feed. And like I said, it feels so good, and I never want it to go away ever again. I hope for the future they can keep this system in, whether it's in a classic or cursed mode, or by default, it needs to be there. And I could argue about why not having loadouts and having the classic point system is really good for the gameplay of zombies, but I think one of the strongest arguments I have is this is just what made zombies special back in the day. It was what made it unique. There's really no other game out there that has a point system like this. And so I never understood why they decided to change it to be something that, in my opinion, was a lot more generic. The idea of just getting a fixed amount of points depending on whether you get a headshot or a body kill, and that's it. That's just so generic. That's uninteresting. That's not what made zombies special in the first place. The point system is a big part of what made this mode so unique. And then add on to that the fact that you start with pretty much nothing and you have to work your way up. That is what zombies is all about. And I'm glad that this mode can represent that. If it's not fully a classic mode, that's okay. At least it's closer to it than what standard mode is. Beyond that, there honestly isn't that many other default changes to cursed mode, at least that we know of. But one thing they did do is you actually are required to use a simpler HUD in this mode. You can't use the minimap, you can't use health bars, you can't use the mission tracker. There's a lot of things that are just automatically turned off, and I think this is a good thing. I turn these things off in standard anyways, but I think it's nice that the entire community has to consistently have a simpler HUD in this mode. It's going to be much better when you're watching people play it online. You don't have to deal with seeing all the point pop-ups and damage point numbers. It's a lot simpler by default, and it looks so much cleaner. Everyone's on the same page. You don't have some people using health bars, other people not using it. It's more what classic zombies was all about, and I really appreciate that. I am also very glad that they opened up cursed mode to everyone, because originally that wasn't the plan. There actually was plans for them to have this be locked behind the main quest, so you'd have to actually do it first in standard to get access to cursed. And I never liked the sound of that, because there are a lot of people out there that want the classic point system, that want no loadouts, but they don't like doing Easter eggs. And I didn't think it made any sense to alienate those players and make it so they just have no way to get access to this mode unless they're forced into doing an Easter egg. And honestly, Ashes of the Damned's Easter egg is pretty hard, so I think a lot of people just would have not bothered to do it at all, and then they would never get access to this mode, and they probably just stop playing the game entirely. And that's not a good way to market your game. Like, you have these systems that have been in zombies before. The classic point system was in zombies by default for a lot of years, so why would you lock that behind an Easter egg? It just made no sense. So I'm very glad that they just open it up to everyone. Anybody can have access to it, but if you want access to the relics, you do actually have to do the quests. But like I said before, even just by default, this mode is really fun and does play very differently than the standard mode. One thing I was worried about for this mode is if it just makes the game harder and there's really no other benefits, then a lot of people might not even bother playing it, because they're just going to feel like, well, you know, I like challenges, but I want to be rewarded for those challenges, so what's the point of forcing a challenge on myself if it's not actually going to give me anything better? But they've answered this problem by giving rewards. There's quite a few cursed mode rewards, whether it's out of the game rewards or in-game rewards. Some of the in-game rewards are involved with using a certain amount of relics. If you use a certain amount of relics, you will start getting more and more rewards. You can get golden armor, you can get Pack-a-Punch tier 4, and you can get the ultra rarity, which obviously Pack-a-Punch tier 4 and ultra rarity basically do the same thing, where they're just going to give your weapons even more damage. But it's going to be crazy to see how this plays, because I'm assuming that guns are going to be killing really, really well, even into the 40s, 50s, and 60s, which we've never really seen guns be extremely effective that high before. So it's going to be really interesting to see how powerful guns can truly get, and I'm quite excited for that. But of course, we won't be able to see it until the community starts to solve some of these relic quests so we can actually try out the relics for ourselves. Overall, when it comes to the positives, I am just very happy that this exists, and I do like that it does feel very different. Again, it's not a classic mode 1-to-1, but it's much closer to being like classic zombies compared to anything else in modern zombies. And in my opinion, Ashes of the Damned in cursed mode is the most fun I've had in any modern zombies game. Anything since Black Ops Cold War, I have had the most fun on Ashes of the Damned, specifically in cursed mode. But now let's get into the negatives, because there are quite a few things that I don't like about cursed mode, or at the very least that I think is just a massive missed opportunity. And a lot of these I do think Treyarch could change in the future. We still have a whole year ahead of us when it comes to Black Ops 7's life cycle, so there's definitely a lot of changes they could make to make cursed mode better, and I hope they make some of these. First of all, one of my biggest worries for cursed mode was the fact that I didn't think it was going to be available on the survival maps. And a lot of people were calling me crazy for that. They were like, why wouldn't it be available on the survival maps? I feel like that's just common sense. But I was right. It's not available on the survival maps. I was worried about it because they never mentioned it. So I was thinking to myself, maybe they'll just not add it for whatever reason. And yeah, it's not available on Van Dorn Farm. And I think this is a massive missed opportunity, because obviously it would play very, very well on the survival maps. I would love to play survival in this game. I want to camo grind in survival, but I want the classic point system. I want no loadouts. I want all these better changes that cursed mode has. And it's unfortunate that that's just not currently available. I'm assuming the reason they didn't want to add it is because you actually have to earn the relics on Ashes of the Damned itself. There's no way to earn the relics on Van Dorn Farm, but once you earn the relics, you have them. You have access to them. So couldn't you just simply earn them on Ashes and then use the relics that you earned on Van Dorn Farm? Every single one of the relics, based on the leaked descriptions of them, can work on any map, including survival maps. There's no reason why they can't. And let's say they don't want relics to work on survival maps for whatever reason, why not at least let us get access to the default version of cursed mode on the survival maps? Because they're going to be adding a lot of survival maps throughout the year. And I'm going to be honest, if they never add cursed mode to the survival experiences, I'm probably never going to play the survival maps. I don't want to play those. They're not going to be fun. I didn't have a lot of fun on Van Dorn Farm in the beta because of the modern systems. And just having the classic point system and no loadouts alone will make survival so much more fun. I do think this has a high likelihood of changing if enough people give feedback on it. So I'm going to ask all of you to give as much feedback to Treyarch as possible through Twitter. Just let them know that you would really love to play cursed mode on the survival maps. They could easily do it by just adding the survival maps within the cursed mode tab itself, or you can make a whole new mode called cursed survival or something and just make it be cursed mode on survival maps. I think that would be absolutely fantastic, and I hope this can happen at least by season 1. Another big missed opportunity in regards to cursed mode is the fact that you cannot play cursed mode in public matches. Now, this obviously makes more sense than not having cursed on the survival maps, because cursed mode is a mode where you have to choose which relics you want to use for your match. So obviously you might be wondering, how would that even work for public matches? Because relics are not person specific. They activate for the entire map. But I definitely think there's ways for Treyarch to work around this. Simply, they could just make it so if you want to play cursed mode by default with no relics, you can just do that with public matches. But if you want relics, you're going to have to do that privately or solo. Or they can do something that I thought would be really, really cool, is if each week they have a different random selection of relics available as a mode for public matches. So maybe like one week there's the 4 perk limit relic and the no ammo crates relic active, but there's no other relics active. It's just those two. And for that week, if you play public matches for cursed mode, you will have those relics active. Maybe even regardless of if you actually earn the relics yourself. I mean, I'm not really sure how that would work, but maybe it could work like that. Again, I understand why Treyarch didn't do this, but I think there's definitely a way they can work around it, and I hope they at least try. I personally don't care too much for public matches, but there's a lot of people I know that only like to play public matches, so the very fact that there is no public matches available for cursed mode is already going to turn off a lot of people from the mode entirely. Another default change in this mode is actually something I'm not too crazy about, and this is the fact that they increased the price of Pack-a-Punch to 10,000 for Tier 1, 25,000 for Tier 2, and 50,000 for Tier 3, which is obviously a lot more than what it is in Standard, and obviously the reason they did this is because of the Classic point system. You can earn a little bit more points than you could regularly. Well, of course, it depends how you're playing. If you're actively using weaker guns in the later rounds to farm points from the zombies, then yes, you can get a lot more points in those later rounds. But if you're just regularly playing, you're not going to earn a ton more points than you would normally, but you still probably will get more points. So it does make sense why they decided to do this, but I have noticed that I'm already spending a lot more points than usual by hitting the mystery box a lot more and by using wall buys a lot more often. And so to me, I already felt like that was balancing it out a bit with the classic point system, but it seems they went a little further with it because they were assuming that pretty much everyone was going to be using those methods of using a weak gun on a later round to get as many points as humanly possible, which the way I see it is by that point in the game, when you're on those later rounds, it's not really the end of the world if someone's able to get fully pack-a-punched by that point in the game anyways, because they're at the later rounds. You're not going to get that many points doing it that early in the game because the zombies are going to die really fast. They don't have a lot of health. So this is really only a method that starts working once you get to the later rounds, and like I said, by that point, I think it's totally fine if someone's able to get a fully pack-a-punch weapon because they spend a lot of time spraying a weaker gun into the hordes of zombies. I think that's totally fine, and it is kind of difficult to do sometimes in this game because the zombies could get quite aggressive and all the special enemies start coming in, so I think it is already balanced even if the prices of the pack-a-punch were lower, but I do understand why they wanted to higher it, so overall, I am okay with this change. I don't think it's the end of the world, but I would prefer if it was just the normal pack-a-punch prices. By far my biggest disappointment is the fact that there is no way to disable rarities in the mode. There's no relics for that, and it's not a change by default. In my opinion, this should have been something they changed by default. They should have made it so all guns are equivalent to green rarity by default, and when you pack-a-punch, it will basically increase not only the pack-a-punch tier, but it will also increase the weapon rarity, just like it does in Vanguard. I'm just personally not a big fan of weapon rarities anymore. I think it's kind of a redundant system, the fact that you're splitting weapon progression and damage progression between two different systems that act very similarly, and even you earn them kind of similarly. You're just killing zombies, getting points, getting salvage, and just using them, but in two different systems that, again, kind of act the same. I think this would be far more satisfying, especially because your progression through pack-a-punch tiers would be much, much greater in damage if it also included the progression that it normally does for rarity increases. Now, of course, the only other change they would really have to make for Cursed Mode to make rarities work is they would probably also have to make it so salvage was limited a bit. You couldn't have as much salvage drop because obviously if you're not worried about upgrading your rarity, you're also going to have way more salvage than usual, so they would have to just lower the amount of salvage you get. But to be honest, salvage is another thing I kind of wanted to be removed from this mode. I was kind of hoping they would just remove arsenal stations, crafting benches, and the idea of salvage entirely, and everything that's in those items would be earned through other means on the map. I think that would have been far more interesting, but I'm not that against the fact that they didn't change that. I just kind of wish they did. Rarities is the thing I care about more than anything. And I did get my hopes up because I honestly thought it was definitely going to happen, since there was an image within the marketing of Black Ops 7 Zombies that had a wall buy that was very clearly a white wall buy, which means there's no rarity on it. So I was thinking to myself, that might be a sign that we're not going to have rarities in Cursed Mode, and that got me really, really excited. And also thought to myself that rarities only really exist because of the loadout system. So if you get rid of loadouts, why do we need rarities? We really don't. They feel kind of pointless in this mode, but they exist there anyways, and it is unfortunate that they're there, but like I said, I still enjoy it. I don't think they ruined the game entirely. I just wish they changed this. It is possible that they could still add a relic later down the line because of course they are going to be adding DLC relics that could remove the rarity system or remove salvage. I think it's more likely that they do the salvage thing. I could see them having a relic that disables the arsenal station and the crafting bench, and all those items are earned through other means. With rarity, I'm not really sure how that would work, because one of the rewards for Cursed Mode is the ultra rarity, which of course means there has to be some sort of rarity system there if you're going to get that reward, but I'm sure they could figure out something. I don't personally have the idea right now. I think it would make more sense to be a default feature, not a relic, because relics are meant to make the game harder, and obviously disabling rarity is not inherently making the game harder unless you do it in the wrong way, which would be making it so all guns are gray rarity or something. That would be absolutely horrible. Nobody wants that. What I said before is that I want each gun to be increased in its damage through the Pack-a-Punch only, not through a whole nother system that pretty much works the same way, just with a different currency. Another thing I wish they could have added is a no armor relic, and honestly after playing Cursed, I don't really see why they couldn't have added a no armor relic, because by default, it's not like the zombies are faster or hit faster, at least to my knowledge. I didn't notice that. Maybe they deal a little bit more damage and I just haven't really been paying attention fully to it because it did feel harder, but I genuinely thought that it was feeling harder because it was taking a little bit longer to get set up due to not having your loadout weapon from the start. But I haven't really noticed if the zombies are actually stronger in this mode. They might spawn in more than they do in standard. Again, I'm not entirely sure on this, but I do think a no armor relic would work, especially because one of the rewards is a golden armor vest. And so I think it would make a lot of sense to have a no armor relic where you start with 0 armor plates and you can't get any armor anywhere until you are able to get enough points for the golden armor vest, then you immediately get that. So basically, you never have to worry about plating the entire game. It's obviously challenging you more in the early rounds. You're more likely to die, but once you get that golden armor vest, you're good to go. And obviously, that's only if you've used enough relics to actually unlock that as a reward. I think it would make a lot of sense. It would obviously make a lot of people happy. I know some people probably wouldn't be happy still because of the golden armor existing there at all. Like I said, I wish they could just remove armor entirely, but it's just there now, so there's not really much they can do about it. I think the reason they don't want to completely remove it is because there's so many augments tied to armor that they didn't really know how to balance that. I'm sure they could have found a way, but they didn't, and that's okay with me, honestly. I just hope that they can add a no armor relic down the line that at the very least makes it so you don't spawn in with any armor, and you can only get armor once you get the golden armor vest. And the last negative I want to talk about has to do with the relics themselves. And I want to give a massive disclaimer here because I know some people don't want to be spoiled on what the relics are. So just skip over this segment of the video. You can just click on the next timestamp. Obviously, I have not played with these relics yet, so I can't give a full judgment on them, but I do want to talk about the fact that I don't really find these to be that interesting. Some of them look fun, some of them will definitely be interesting to use, but a lot of them just look kind of not fun whatsoever. So first of all, there's the 4 perk limit one, which we already heard about before, and I was really excited for this one, but the way it's described in the leaked code is that players can only carry 4 Perk-a-Colas, which makes me think that it's not what we thought it was. I was hoping it was going to be a 4 perk limit based on how many you can purchase, but if you wanted more than 4, you could still earn those by doing side Easter eggs. But the way it's described makes it sound like it's going to be a hard limit of 4, and you just can't get any more beyond that, which in my opinion is not interesting. I like perk limits only if you can earn more through side Easter eggs, and so if you can't do that, I'm probably not going to want to run this relic. There's also the no ammo crates relic, which disables all ammo crates on the map, and I actually like this one a lot. I probably will run it because I think this actually will not only make the game feel more like classic zombies, but it's also going to be a bit of an interesting challenge. If you run out of ammo, you can't just rely on getting more from the ammo crates. You either need to wait for a max ammo, or you need to make sure you find a new weapon, or you can just get a wall weapon and then just keep buying ammo from the wall as well. So there's different options you have, but I do find it to be quite interesting. I probably will run this relic. Another relic that I do kind of like the sound of is no self-revive kits, meaning you will literally have no ability to revive yourself in this mode. You have 1 life and that's it. And I do think that could be a pretty fun challenge. I don't think it's like the most interesting relic possible, but it will be a fun challenge to have. There's another one that makes it so enemies' health regenerates, which this one sounds like it's going to be really challenging, but I actually quite like the sound of it because it's going to force you to go really fast. You're going to have to try to kill the zombies as fast as humanly possible so they can't regenerate their health. This will be really annoying with special enemies though. That's going to be a nightmare, but like I said, it could definitely still be sort of interesting. And the last one that I kind of like is the relic that says every weapon the player has will swap each round, but will retain the Pack-a-Punch and Rarity levels. So it's basically like a sharpshooter mode where it forces you to swap to a random weapon each round. That sounds like a really fun, gimmicky one that should be interesting. It's not one I'm going to run most of the time because I don't want that experience most of the time, but it will be fun to at least try it out for a challenge experience. But honestly, the rest of the relics I do not like the sound of at all. First of all, there's one that quite literally turns off all augments in the game. That sounds horrible. Augments are one of the most enjoyable parts of Black Ops 7 and Black Ops 6. Just the fact that you can have all these cool upgrades for your field upgrades, your ammo mods, and your perks. Obviously, this will make the game a lot harder, but not in a fun way. It's just removing a really fun customization aspect of the game. So obviously, these relics are optional, but this is one I'm just not going to run. I will not have fun running this at all. I think it's going to just make the game less enjoyable, so it kind of feels like a wasted relic to me. The next one is that normal power-up spawns are disabled. Now, I personally have no interest in this one as well because I love power-ups. I think it's one of the most enjoyable parts of zombies, the RNG of a power-up dropping, and sometimes it being like the perfect time for it. Like you get a max ammo right when you need it, or you get the nuke right when you need it, or an insta-kill right when you need it. It's fun, it's enjoyable, and it's one of the most classic and iconic elements of the mode. So why would I want to remove that? I have no idea. Obviously, it's going to make the game harder, and obviously this mode is partially meant to be a challenge mode, so it makes sense there's going to be some that are challenging. But again, I wish the challenges were in more interesting and fun ways like some of the other relics, because this one is just not that. This next one, it kind of blows my mind. This one, it says that mimic props have infiltrated the map. So if I'm reading this correctly, it means that if you use this relic, there's gonna be mimics on the map that you're playing. Who in the hell would want that? I don't know who would enjoy that. I'm sure somebody out there likes mimics. I am sick of mimics after Black Ops 6. I don't want to see them again, so I'm not gonna use this relic either. And obviously, if it's anything like the Halloween LTM that they did in Black Ops 6, it's going to be an absolute nightmare, and I do not want to deal with that. And the last relic is one that makes it so the round start delay is cut down by 75%. So it basically just makes it a bit faster paced. You don't have as much time in between rounds. And I like when the zombies matches go a little bit slower paced. I think it's more enjoyable that way. So this is also one I'm not really going to find much interest in, but I can see why some people might want this. But honestly, isn't this also basically just a rampage inducer? Why couldn't you just activate the rampage inducer? Is it really something that needs to be a relic? I have no idea. As I said, not all of these are bad. Some of them do sound pretty interesting and fun. I'm definitely going to have a good time unlocking them through the quests, but I just wish that all of them were more interesting challenges, because honestly, a lot of them don't sound that interesting. Of course, we're going to have a lot of DLC relics, so I really hope they can add a bunch of more interesting ones, especially ones that try to make the game feel more like classic zombies. As I said before, the no armor relic would be very, very nice. I would also love a relic that turns the Wonder Fizz into the classic Wonder Fizz, because that would technically make the game a bit harder, because obviously you're not guaranteed specific perks out of the classic Wonder Fizz. It's more randomized. So that would be really, really fun. I would love to see that. Just more relics that challenge you in interesting ways that, again, try to call back to classic zombies in some way, shape, or form. That would be really, really nice. All in all, I really do think the future of this mode will be very, very bright. I think they're going to add a lot of relics throughout the year that will make the game more and more enjoyable. And like I said, I hope they do make some changes based on some of my feedback in this video, because if we don't get to play Cursed on the survival maps, that would be a huge missed opportunity. I also think this mode has a huge potential to be the best way for them to experiment with different mechanics so they can better choose what to do with zombies going forward after Black Ops 7, whether it's Black Ops 8 or if Sledgehammer makes a zombies mode in 2027, whatever it may be, this mode will allow them to test a bunch of features without actually changing the standard mode. I think they didn't want to mess with the standard game because they knew zombies is very popular at this point. People love to play it for the camo grind and leveling up their weapons for Warzone and multiplayer, and they didn't want to touch that. They didn't want to mess with that. They wanted to instead test different mechanics and systems in Cursed and see how people feel about it. For example, the classic point system. They're going to see how people respond to that. Do people enjoy the game more like that? And if they do enjoy it more like that, maybe the classic point system will become the standard version of the game with Black Ops 8. So I think as a community, we need to do our best job to give as much feedback to Treyarch as possible, respectfully of course, when it comes to how we feel about these systems and if it makes the game better or worse. And I do think the more we play Cursed mode, the more likely Treyarch is to actually make big changes going forward into Black Ops 8 when it comes to the core systems of the game. Hopefully they'll find a better middle ground rather than trying to split the entire community between two separate modes. And in general, this mode really made Black Ops 7 so much better for me. I am enjoying it a lot more. I really wasn't loving it on day one, before the Easter egg dropped, before Curse mode dropped, and we were just playing the bare bones version of Ashes of the Damned on standard. I didn't really love it. I thought it was okay, I thought it was fine, but I just felt kind of whatever about it. But now I'm really excited to jump into the map even more, try to figure out some of these relic quests, try to figure out some other side Easter eggs, and I think I'm going to play it a lot more than I played Black Ops 6 Zombies. I'm probably going to go for the camo grind now. It's going to be a lot of fun, and hopefully you guys will be there for all the videos I'm going to post on this game. Don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel. Peace out, everyone.